Hey, parents, it is the holiday season. So, hoop de doo, maybe. This is a great time of year. Joy and kindness and laughter all around us. But what if you're going through grief? What if this is your first Christmas, second Christmas without a parent, without a sibling, or maybe without a child? How do you go through these holidays, no matter how you celebrate them, when you're grieving and when there's so much joy in the air? And we're going to talk about that today. My name is Tim Wright, here along with Dr. Michael Gurian, the Wonder of Parenting podcast, a brain science approach to parenting. And Michael is no stranger to this topic because Michael has been through this, lost his wife over 2 years ago, and will be going through his third Christmas season without her. And Michael, we're going to talk about that because I know there's been a change from that first Christmas to the third one. But just a personal story for me, years and years ago, when I was a kid, our Christmas Eves were pretty packed because my grandpa would preach at the 11 o'clock Christmas Eve service. So we would have to have some family time. Then we would go over to my mom's side of the family for a Christmas Eve meal with all of our cousins. And then we would head back and go to church. So one of the traditions then was to go to my Aunt Elsie's house, Uncle Al and Aunt Elsie, or Aunt Marie, sorry, Uncle Al and Aunt Marie. And Uncle Al was this big character, big voice, big German background. And when we would sing Christmas carols, his would be the primary voice. And he passed away. And I remember that first year he was gone, just watching Marie sitting with the family. She was still at her house. And, she couldn't even sing. The tears just came. And yet there was something about her presence, the way she handled herself, that said that still in the midst of the grief, she was able to let some of that Christmas in. And I know all people handle grief very differently. There's as many people there are in the world, there are probably different ways to grieve. So we want to talk today a little bit to you parents about, maybe your own grief or maybe the grief your kids are going through, having lost. Could be a pet, it could be a grandparent. Grief comes in different forms, loss comes in different forms. Michael, talk a little bit about, for you, that first Christmas came just a few months after Gail passed away. You're navigating that yourself. You're navigating that with your daughters who've lost their mom. Tell us a little bit about just what that was like, some of the things that you experienced, some of the things that you allowed yourself to do, or maybe said, I'm not going to do that this year. What are the ways that you got through the holiday, that first Christmas season, and for you, Hanukkah as well, as a grieving spouse?
Yeah, I remember it vividly. So it's 2 years ago. Gail passed in August, and then of 2023, and then Christmas came up, fast, Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I actually, the kids decided, so I have two daughters. They decided we're going to do Christmas at Dad's house, at the house, Dad and Mom's house, which is in Spokane. So they came here and they organized everything. And it was, beforehand, I was thinking we shouldn't do this. Like, it's going to be too hard to see that many people. And one of the things that I'd love to say to our audience is that that's such a normal thing, as being kind of overwhelmed and even anticipating going to be overwhelmed by all these people, because one is so inward in grieving, especially grieving something huge. Like Gail and I were together 40 years. So, when I lost her, that was just, that grief was everything. And so I even talked to him about, I don't know if we can do this, I don't know if I can do this and have all these people, because not only my kids, but one of the husband's mom and brothers come in from the East Coast every year to see them. And so there's going to be all of them. And so it was very hard. And in fact, Gabrielle and I got in a shouting match. We were both, we forgave each other quickly, but we were both so stressed and saddened. And And I think if I, when I look back on it, I would what I would do differently actually is I probably wouldn't have had everyone all the time. Maybe done one thing with everyone, and then um, so that's my most vivid memory. In terms of enjoying it, very hard. Didn't have
Yeah.
grandkids yet, so now I have grandkids, but didn't have grandkids yet, so it was very hard to enjoy it. I love seeing my kids, of course, but it was just, the grief was so hard. Then by the next year, right, different. Um, a year and a half almost has gone by. There are two grandkids, different. Not
Yeah.
that situation. But right after, I just want to warn people, if you think you shouldn't be around big crowds, it's probably okay not to be around big crowds.
Yeah. So part of the grief that you're going through, which may be pertinent for some of our parents listening today, is your grief is different from the grief that your daughters are experiencing, and probably their needs in grief, especially around the holidays, are different than yours. So it almost sounds like in some ways you just wanted to be alone and grieve. And it almost sounds like your daughters to grieve needed to be back in mom's house and do some of the things that they would normally do when mom's around.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I of course accommodated them, and glad I did. And I think, but you're right. I as the husband losing his wife, that's different than
Hmm.
the children losing their mom. And you're right, they're different grief. But and I would say even my kids though afterwards said, yeah, that was overwhelming.
Mm,
So and you don't, to some extent, I think we don't know unless we go through it. Are we going to be the person for whom the big crowds is helpful? Like it sounds like your Aunt Marie, it was neat for her.
yeah,
Um, oh, and or am I the person for whom the big crowds don't help with the
yeah,
grief? And part of the focus there is we're grieving. So for the one grieving, we're looking for what's going to help us with our grief. For other people who aren't grieving, they're looking for, or who are grieving but differently, they're looking for, well, what's going to help me to connect with everyone, what and reconnect with everyone. And that's really fair, because as you say, everyone does this differently, so
yeah,
it's really fair. Yeah.
yeah. And part of it is once you get in that room with everybody and you've got someone like you, Michael, grieving your daughters and people come around you, there's also sort of that awkwardness on the part of those of us coming in. What do we say? How do we handle this? And it's just grief is such an emotional, important part of losing someone. And when you go through it, especially the first time, like you did or your daughters do, man, there's no simple way to go through it. You just got to do it and figure out the best way for
Mm.
yourself and your family. I want to come back and I want you to put your therapist hat on next,
Hmm.
and we're going to talk a little bit about kids and when they're grieving. So you're listening to the Wonder Parenting Podcast, the Brain Science Approach to Parenting. We are talking today about how to navigate your way through the holidays if you're going through loss, and we'll be back with you in just a moment. So, Michael, I'm guessing that for most people listening to our podcast, if there is loss or grief, um, for the children, for the smaller kids or the kids in our family, it will probably be a grandparent or two, um, a beloved uncle or aunt or family friend, someone who was older. Um, and that first time around, especially if you're really close to grandma or grandpa, can be really difficult for the children. And then, of course, it's difficult for mom and dad because they've lost their parents. Um, when you are working with people going through grief, or you're working with parents working with children through grief, what are some of the things that you want them to know? Again, recognizing they'll all grieve differently.
Yeah. Well, one thing that gets sort of off what before the break you were talking about the awkwardness. One thing is
Yeah.
just like we, if we say to someone who's grieving, if we say, I'm so sorry for your loss, and what do you need? How can I help? What do you
Yeah.
need? Like then no one has to have any awkwardness. You know what I mean?
Good.
Then we all know, everyone knows to say, I'm sorry for your loss. What can I do to help? And so that's one thing I always try to help people with. Um, uh, and then if there's awkwardness, it's not on you, the person who's approaching the grieving person, right?
Right.
It's going to be just that they're not in the space to be able to handle conversation right now. But we have done our part, so we don't have to
Yep.
feel awkward. And for the people who are around the grieving person, um, you know, that person is seeking beauty. That person is seeking memories,
Mm.
and the beauty of memories of the person they've lost, and it's part of what helps with the grieving process. So for those of us around it, let's bring up memories. Like, we'll have a toast, or we'll, do you remember when? And boy, I remember, mom or grandma or grandpa, or you said he had a booming voice, like you said,
Mhm.
about like those sorts of things are just really helpful. The beautiful memories are great.
Mhm.
And so those around the grieving person, if when it's appropriate to facilitate that, is a good thing. Um, and it's really a good thing for the community around the grieving person. So this family that's at the event, and of course, many of them could be grieving at this, and there's probably someone who's grieving the most, right? Like if parents have lost a child, okay, then the parents
Yeah.
are or I lost my wife, everyone lost someone, and it's okay to focus on the person that we think is massively grieving,
Mm.
and to just really ask them what they need, and to try to assess what they need and help them, with what they need. And that's good and okay. And that could mean, if everyone's grieving equally, that we basically are going around the table, and each person is able to tell their story. Because grieving, what other people can do for us who are grieving, and what we can do for each other, is just to carry the story. We can't cure the grief, right? I mean, it's something that has to be gone through over a period of years, months to years, depending on the severity. But we can carry their story, and that means we invite their story. And some of that is memories of the other person, and some of it is how are you doing? How are you doing right now? Well, I'm doing, I'm fine. I'm doing good. And then coming back to it, how are you doing? This kind of wild to have all these people around. I'll just project, my
Mhm.
situation. It's a work for anyone. And well, yeah, it's a lot of people, and to just help them carry their story, not only the story of who they've lost, but the story of their own grieving process, to
Mhm.
carry that story and allow them to be self-aware in that story. So that can also mean, if everyone's grieving equally, like the kids inviting their story, of where are you at right now with your grief, and listening to the story. And if they don't want to tell the story, that's fine, move to the next person. But might circle back, it would come up in another context when 2 or 3 people are together, not the whole dinner table. Because what we're doing is we're trying to help people carry their story. That's going to help them through the grief. And if someone is totally shut down, one thing I always say to folks is, look, if someone is totally shut down, it's okay. It's okay to just kind of assess that, not try to force something. Like at some point during the whole holiday, we probably would like to get that person to open up, because we're probably going to be a little worried that that person
Yeah.
is very depressed, but it's also okay to let someone be shut down for a while, and then gradually, more one-on-one than in a big group, to be taking a walk with them and trying to open them up that way to help them. Because people can shut down, and that's probably more male than female. A lot of reasons for that.
Yep.
More older guys are going to shut down. So don't have to overreact to it, but somewhere move to a one-on-one to try to open that person up.
So my wife's mom died many, many years ago now. So our kids were fairly little. I want to say that they were, elementary school. And of course, Jan is going through her own grieving, having lost her mother. Her mom was only like 62, 63 years old. So we lost her pretty young. Seems really young now when we're both 67, 68 years old, right?
Right.
And I don't think we were quite in tune to what Grandma's death did have impact on the children. And there was a moment where Alicia was just having a meltdown. And I went into her room and I just climbed up on the bed with her, and she was crying and just upset. And I said, what's going on? And she just said something to the effect, I really miss Grandma. And we kind of had no idea. She wasn't necessarily showing any signs of it. Maybe we were so wrapped up in Jan's grief that we kind of missed it. What are some things that, especially during the holidays, but maybe whenever, a grandparent dies or there's significant loss in the family, what are some things that we look for in our children to suggest that they're maybe not doing as well as we think they are? Because kids, all of us grieve differently. And with Alicia, we just didn't quite see it until finally she sort of had that emotional break. And I what reminded me of that was when you and your daughter had that little fight, that argument, which wasn't anger at each other. It was just deep grief and trying to find a way to talk about it. So what should we look for in our kids that suggests that maybe they're hurting and we're not quite seeing the normal signs?
Yeah, it's so interesting you bring this up. I was at our sponsor, Army and Navy Academy, right? And I was there and I was talking to someone who had just lost, literally asked this question. A grandparent had just died, and the parent was trying to track what's the, am I doing right by my child, basically, right? And of course, what we look for is are there behavioral changes, right? We're looking for a post-trauma response.
Yeah.
And so how are their behavioral changes? Is the child emotionally shut down? Is the child like just trying to be immensely cheerful all the time? And so those are the sorts of things we look for. And then if the child is having behavioral changes, then that we kind of are getting on right away, and we're going to try to get at that grief right away. We're going to try to get at the emotional life of the child going through the grief, because that is a post-trauma response. If the child is being very cheerful or the other end of it, we're going to try to get at it, but we'll probably try to get at it somewhat differently. It'll be more like, I'm here to talk to you. I want to be with you, to be here, knowing that the child is going to ask, just like Alicia did. They're going through it in their own time, and they are going to get hit with the griefs to where it creates a meltdown. They're going to get hit with that in their own time. And while it's great for us to say, because we know they're hurting, it's great, as a ritual at the breakfast table, how are you doing today with the loss of Grandma? Do you want to talk about it? That's really good. We should do that. That's beautiful. But the child may not be there yet. And so the child may actually need to have it build up and then have a meltdown in order for the child to get at it. And that's okay. We can follow the rhythm of the child. But if the child is having behavioral changes, then we're going to have to, get involved now. Like, okay, we're going to press at the child. Okay, what is going on? We got to help you with this, because look at what's happening. You're picking these fights. You just hit that kid. You know what I mean? But absent the behavioral changes, we can do it more along the pace of what the child is going through. And stories are going to be really helpful. Not only memories, but also books, depending on the age of the child, books about grieving, about losing a grandparent, like those things are very helpful. And having the child draw, if the child has any graphic is into that at all, to be drawing pictures as tools and strategies. And certainly us as counselors, we do that, with kids. We're using all these strategies to have them get at it, not just words.
Yeah. And what's interesting to me is we as adults have a hard enough time trying to figure out what's going on in our souls, our hearts, when we're going through the emotions of grieving. These little kids, they just don't have the maturity, the words, anything really, the strategies to help them cope. And so all of a sudden it just may burst out of them and they don't even know what hits them. And so for us to be aware of that, we're going to come back.
Teachers.
Oh,
let me just say
Yeah.
real quick that the teachers and educational systems and institutional systems,
Yeah.
that child has had a trauma and comes to school like a day later
Yes.
or 2 days later. It's great for the parents to inform the teachers so that the teachers can be like, okay, that little response that child had, I don't need to react to it. That's a grief response. That's a little bit of a trauma response. No harm done, and it's a signal. After class, I'm going to pull little, Julie aside and say, how you doing with the loss of your grandma? So it is great to have kind of the community.
That's such great advice to just let the important people in your children's lives know what's going on. And then I love this about bringing in books, drawing pictures, because these are, in a sense, they kind of come at the grief sideways for kids. Because sometimes I know when my wife was diagnosed with her cancer 4 years ago, and we would sit with the grandkids and say, "Do you have any questions?" They kind of was like deer in the headlights. They don't know what to ask. They don't know how to process it.
Yep.
But you start coming sideways a little bit. You tell them some stories. Hey, we met with the doctor and so on. So that can really be helpful for them. So we're going to take a break and come back. I want to talk about different kinds of losses that may not be the loss of life, but other things that you kind of lose that you think about at the holiday season. As Michael mentioned, we are brought to you in part by some great friends of ours. The Army and Navy Academy is a private all-boys military boarding school for grades 7 through 12, located on the Pacific Ocean in Carlsbad, California. They are a Gurian Center for Excellence, and they use brain-based research to help boys thrive. Their structured environment, exceptional teachers, and leadership programs align with how boys learn best through hands-on experiences, mentorship, and challenge. For over 114 years, Army and Navy Academy has been shaping virtuous young men by instilling confidence, character, and purpose. You can discover more at armyandnavyacademy.org. That's armyandnavyacademy.org. And we will be back with you in just a moment to wrap up this special holiday episode on how to handle the holidays with grief. Back with you in a moment. Michael, there are other things that we lose that can somewhat impact our Christmas celebrations. And I'll just give a personal one. My wife was diagnosed with a neuroendocrine cancer, which is more information than people need, except to say that the kind of cancer she has is treatable but not curable. And so she's been through, in the last 4 years, several different rounds of therapies. And, we've been in a round of life right now where things have been pretty good. And then we got some news that she's got a few more spots, so they have to take care of that. We have a tradition here, my wife and I, of going out for walks every night this time of year with the dogs just to enjoy the Christmas lights in our neighborhood. And we've got some really nice stuff that happens here in Arizona because it's nice enough that you can put Christmas lights up. But for the last couple of Christmas seasons, I've mainly been doing those walks by myself. And it brings a certain kind of grief that things that we used to do together, we can't always do together. Now, finally, last night we went out for a walk, which was nice, but she felt it today. She was a little tired. So there are little things like that. It could be that the family has moved to a new home and a new community, and this is their first Christmas or holiday in a new community, in a new school. It could be the loss of a pet, their dog who's been around, or cat for 15 of their Christmases, gone. These are all little moments of grief as well. And sometimes we have reactions to them that we don't anticipate because we normally think about grief being these really deep losses. But these little losses can sort of come in and tweak our celebrations. Talk a little bit about how we manage those and how we stay open to what change, let's say change, can bring to the holiday season and how it can impact our kids.
Yeah, to a great extent, the word change is so important there. It's there are these micro griefs, let's say, and macro griefs, right? That you're
Yeah.
talking about. Macro, you've lost a child or a spouse, etc. Micro is more like I can't take these walks with my wife, but even though it's a smaller grief, it's still a big grief, and
Yeah.
right, and the grief is because the micro brings up the macro. So I'm
Mm,
I won't say anything about you, but I'm on a walk that I can't take with my wife. So every time I'm doing that, I am grieving the
mm,
loss, right? And I'm anticipating the loss. And luckily in your case, this is treatable
yeah.
in Jan's case. But you know what I mean? Like the brain is going through each time I take the walk, my brain goes through
Yeah.
each of the ruminations about, loss and all of that. So the micro is big, and we go through it, and we tell the story to others. That's really what we can do, because we have to go through it. There's no way around going through it, and going through it is good, and because that's part of how change happens, is we have to. That was then. I got to grieve the loss of that, but this is now. I got to go. Okay, this is now, and then I have to anticipate what now is, and then I have to move through now, and that means I have to make peace with the change, and it's going to take time, right? So we're
Hmm.
patient with ourselves. That's going to take time, to go through that, and what hopefully will happen, and what can help is to create a new tradition. To be When we lose one thing, let's be trying to create a new thing, and not necessarily immediately, but at least it's a brain focus. Like, okay, I don't know what the new thing is yet, but I'm going to do a new thing.
Yeah.
So if I can't walk with my spouse anymore, I'm going to do, we're going to make sure to watch a movie together every night,
Right.
or, whatever it would be for that family, create a new thing.
Yep.
And that really does help with making peace with the change, to have the new thing, rather than for everything to go kind of into an empty, black hole, where
Yeah.
all these things we've lost, and it's a black hole. We haven't created new light. So I would say both, and right, we have to patiently grieve the loss and the change, and create the new thing that is sort of the transformation. Because change, this is more of a spiritual thing, but as you know, change is also transformation. So
Yeah.
as a change is occurring, we are transforming. And then we later realize, oh, I've transformed into this, and I wouldn't be this if I hadn't gone through all those changes. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's so helpful. And you mentioned creating new traditions, and the holidays are so filtered through our traditional ritual expectations of what Christmas should be.
Mm-hmm.
We do this on this day, we do it this, we open the gifts this way. So when Jan and I got married, for example, in my family, we always open the Christmas gifts, the youngest to the oldest, and you would watch them open every single gift. In Jan's family, it was just mass chaos. Everybody opened gifts at the same time, right? So, my expectation of the Christmas ritual and her expectation of the Christmas ritual, everybody has their rituals. Well, this is the way we've always done it. And the good thing about these rituals is those traditions and rituals hold us, because they're sort of the thing we can count on when life sort of can't always be depended on. And we come back to some certainty.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where those rituals are good. And then creating some new rituals to replace ones that maybe you can't do anymore, just says to your heart and your soul, it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an interesting time for me, because for 41 Christmas Eves, I have been at church all night, doing Christmas Eve services. And, back in the day, it was 8 a night. And then, up until recently, it was 3 or 4 on Christmas Eve, and I'd get home late at night. And I'm not doing that this year. I've retired.
Mm-hmm.
And so partly, there's this sense of joy that I can just, and it was always the highlight for me. So it's not that it didn't give me joy, but there's a different kind of joy that I can just sit now and be a part of, rather than leading it all, which I love to do. but my body is starting to gear up for Christmas Eve services. My brain is saying, you got to get
Right.
ready. You got a big night coming. And so it'll be interesting for me now just to kind of navigate my way through creating new Christmas Eve rituals that have been set for me for 41 years. So I'm in that process. And this is not a grief that comes with sorrow, a little bit of sorrow because I love doing what I did, but more of just that, what's the new thing coming up? But again, sometimes that grief does lead to, of course, the tears and the sorrow. And that's what we've tried to address today.
And
And
those are
so
good.
may your traditions, whatever they are, be a source of comfort for you, and something that kind of holds you, our listeners, during this time of celebration. So Michael and I are going to do something we haven't done in 7 years of podcasting. We're going to take a couple weeks off. And so we're going to play some oldies but goodies. They're always goodies. And so I will search the archives for some of our old Christmas episodes, and we'll put those up. And we're going to be back with you at the new year. And we've got some great stuff coming up, as always. So, Michael, happy holidays to you and your family.
You too, man. You too.
And we wish that to all of you listeners. And we appreciate your listening. We appreciate your support. Look forward to being back with you in January as we continue talking about how to parent our kids using brain science. I'm Tim, right along with Dr. Michael Gurian, wishing you the best of holidays.